Good afternoon, buenas tardes, bonsoir, boa tarde. Today, Muntú, the International and Interdisciplinary Research Group on African and African Diaspora Studies, continues its series of international seminars. The guest is Dr. Thomas Edison at University of Louisville. His talk will be about translating race and culture in the Puerto Rican drama Vejigantes. Buenas tardes. Hoy, Muntú, el Grupo Internacional e Interdisciplinario sobre Estudios Africanos y de las Diásporas Africanas, continúa su ciclo de seminarios internacionales con el invitado Dr. Thomas Edison de la Universidad de Louisville, y su charla será sobre traduciendo raza y cultura en la obra puertorriqueña Vejigantes. Bonsoir, Muntú, groupe de recherche internationale et interdisciplinaire sur les études africaines et des diasporas africaines, continue son cycle de séminaires internationaux. L'invité, c'est le docteur Thomas Edison de l'Université de Louisville, ou autrement dit, University of Louisville. Il parlera de traduire la race et la culture dans l'œuvre portoricaine Vejigantes. Boa tarde. Hoje, Muntú, o Grupo Internacional e Interdisciplinar em Estudos Africanos e das Diásporas Africanas, segue com seu ciclo de seminários internacionais. O convidado é o profe. Doutor Thomas Edison, da Universidade de Louisville, ou, dicho de outra forma, University of Louisville, nos Estados Unidos. Sua fala, sua apresentação será sobre traduzindo a raça e a cultura na obra porto-riquenha Vejigantes. Dr. Thomas Edison, now you have the floor to talk to our public, and you will have 45 minutes. And after 45 minutes, you will have some question and answer. All yours now.
Wonderful. This is a great opportunity, and I want to thank Muntú Seminar for giving me and other scholars an opportunity to share our research, especially at an international level. As I do this talk, I want to thank Roberto Ramos Pereira, who helped me a great deal with this project, and Dr. Bonnie Hildebrand Reynolds, who is someone who helped to kind of instill in me this passion for the island of Puerto Rico, which is a beautiful space. In my talk today, before talking about translating the work, I'm going to talk about the historical context of Puerto Rico so that we can understand why the work is so important. The second part is I will give you a plot summary of the play itself. And then the third part is I'll talk about the translation process and how interesting it was trying to translate race and culture from Spanish to English. At the end, you are welcome to ask questions, and I really look forward to questions that you might have. Puerto Rico the nickname is La Perla del Caribe, the Pearl of the Caribbean. And it was found, or not found, but it was visited on Christopher Columbus's second visit to the Americas. When he was there were Taino indigenous populations, and those populations uh, began to decrease. They died of smallpox, venereal disease, murder, and suicide. By 1543, most of the Taino were gone. Slaves were imported, or enslaved individuals were imported to the island in 1511, and slavery was abolished in 1873. The island was called Borinquen originally. So that's why today a lot of Puerto Ricans, especially those that live on the island, call themselves Boricua, to kind of make a connection with the native name of the island. Now, Puerto Rico was colonized by Spain until in 1898 as a result of the explosion of the USS Maine in Havana, Cuba. The United States went to war with Spain. And as a result, they gained 4 territories that Spain had colonized. They gained Cuba, Guam, the Philippines, and also the island of Puerto Rico. Now, in theory, these islands were no longer a colony of Spain, but indirectly they became colonies of the United States. And there's also questions about the USS Maine was a ship that exploded, and the United States accused Spain of exploding the island or exploding the ship. But there were a lot of investigations and questions as to if the United States blew up the ship itself to have a reason to go to war with Spain. During this period, the United States was working to take control of the Americas. This was called Manifest Destiny. The term kind of began in the 1820s, and it was the idea that the United States was destined by God to expand its domination and spread democracy and capitalism across the entire North American, Central American, and South American continents. And there's one poem that I want to read, which kind of underscores the mentality during this period. It is a poem that was written by British poet Rudyard Kipling, and it's titled White Man's Burden. It was written in 1899. Take up the white man's burden. Send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile to serve your captives' need. To wait in heavy harness on fluttered folk and wild, your new caught sullen peoples, half devil and half child. And that last line, half devil, half child, reflects kind of the mentality that the United States had toward people on the island of Puerto Rico. Now, Puerto Rico became a territory of the United States in 1898. And in 1917, Puerto Ricans were granted a type of U.S. citizenship. That happened, ironically, during the later years of the First World War. And this was a way to encourage Puerto Ricans to enroll to be soldiers to fight in the war. And this is not unique. I've seen this especially in Uruguay, how enslaved men were encouraged to fight in wars, the wars of independence, as a way to demonstrate their loyalty to the country. Those men were also put on the front lines, and they were the first to be shot. Now, around the 1930s, a lot of United States fruit companies took over in Puerto Rico and bought up all the land. They owned about 80% of all the fruit production companies. And in 1947, and this is really important because it plays a big impact in the play Vejigantes. In 1947, Operation Bootstrap began. And that was a business plan, an industrial development plan to shift the island's economy from agricultural to production, manufacturing bras and razors in large factories. They, in exchange for the businesses locating itself on the island, they were able to avoid paying taxes. They sometimes got tax incentives, and also they didn't have to pay the same wages that they would pay people who worked in the United States. And during this same period, a lot of women were able to work in these factories, but in order to do that, they were expected to take pills. In some cases, they were not even notified what the pills were, but they were experimental pills, which would later become birth control pills. So these women served as guinea pigs for the early trials of birth control pills. Now, at the same time, when Operation Bootstrap was taking place, there was a lot of unrest because there was a group of Puerto Ricans that wanted the island to become independent. And one of the major leaders of that was Pedro Albizu Campos. He was one of the first Latinos to study in the United States at the University of Harvard. And he led revolts and protests. He was arrested and imprisoned in the United States. And while he was imprisoned, he was used for experimental testing with different drugs. So during this period of tension, there were two groups. One group, Los Independistas, that wanted the island to be independent. And then there was another group that wanted the island to be part of the United States, thinking that financially, structurally, the nation would do better being part of the United States. And during this period of tension, it even rose to a point that there was a law that took effect in 1957 called the Puerto Rican Gag Law, or Ley de la Mordaza. And this was a law that made it illegal to protest against Puerto Rican statehood. You could not have patriotic literature, and any type of items associated with Puerto Rican nationalism was considered illegal, even the flag. And one thing that most people are not aware of is that the flag that Bad Bunny was carrying during the halftime show of the Super Bowl, the blue was a light color blue. That was the original color of the blue in the Puerto Rican flag. Now, the flag has a dark navy blue. And the fact that what Bad Bunny did was something that goes under the radar. Not many people are aware of it, but older Puerto Ricans understand the symbolic gestures that appeared in that performance. What I'm going to do now is, if for people that are interested, there's a wonderful book called War Against All Puerto Ricans by Nelson A. Dennis. It was published in 2015, and it is a book that really highlights the destructive and negative attitude that the United States demonstrated toward Puerto Rico in the middle of the 1900s. So now I'm going to start to talk about the play Vejigantes, which is an incredible work. It was written by Puerto Rico's most famous dramatist, Francisco Arrivi. He is nicknamed the father of Puerto Rican drama. And the work underscores the culture that was existing in the middle of the 1900s, when businesses were coming to Puerto Rico to establish themselves. And a lot of these businesses carried with them individuals that had racist North American ideas with them. Now, inside the play, bomba music is really pivotal. Bomba is an Afro Puerto Rican dance tradition that is a ritual and is very popular in Loíza, which was a escaped slave community outside of San Juan, and also in Ponce. And bomba is music where there's drummers and there's a dancer. The drummers follow the movements of the dancers. And if you're interested to see a short video explaining that, you can go to YouTube and look at Bomba, an African legacy in Puerto Rico. And I produced it, and will help you to understand that relationship between the drum and dance. Now, in the play, it taps into something that most, especially Puerto Ricans, will recognize. There's an expression, la abuela, ¿onde está? And your grandmother, where's she at? And that is this phenomenon which Puerto Ricans that wanted to appear wealthy wanted to appear white, because being wealthy and white were one and the same. And in these homes in elegant neighborhoods such as El Condado in San Juan, they would have large pictures of their grandfathers, usually white Spanish men, or their great grandfathers. These would be in the living room. So whenever someone came in the house, you would always see that picture. But there would never be pictures of the grandmothers. And that's because the grandmothers were probably of African ancestry. Now, let me give you a quick, I guess I need to talk about Frantz Fanon. He wrote Black Skin, White Mask, and it was published in 1952. This play works well in illustrating the theories that Frantz Fanon talks about, in which individuals of Black ancestry internalize self-hatred based off of the racism that they are grown inside of. Now, in the first act, it takes place in 1901, and a young girl named Tonya, she's about 15, 16, 17, she is dancing to bomba music. It's at night, it's a full moon, wonderful celebration. And then a masked character, a Vejigante, Vejigantes are figures that have horns. They symbolize the devil and negative spirits. Benedict is dressed, actually, it might be as a caballero, as a gentleman. There's three characters: Vejigantes, caballeros, which are gentlemen, and then the third are locas, which are men that are dressed as women, and they talk in falsetto. And Benedicto is pursuing Tonia. We can tell by his movements that he's intoxicated. He seduces her, and the locas, talking as griot figures, kind of let us know that she wanted to be conquered by him. And later on in Act 1, we see that she has been violently raped. Her clothes are torn, her clothes are dirty, and Benedicto is not as intoxicated as he was. And she's upset, and she says, "What are we going to do? What happens if I get pregnant?" And he says, "If you get pregnant, we'll feed it, we'll buy it clothes. Don't worry, I'll take care of the situation." And he promises to talk with her father the next day. He tells her, "Just be calm, go back to where you were dancing with everybody else, say that you have to go home early to go to sleep." And he does make a promise to her. He says, "Do you know that little shack behind the store? You could live there. And in the daytime, you can be my servant. And at night, you can be my queen." Now, in Act 2, it starts off with now Mama Tonia, who is about 60, late 60s, gray hair, and we meet her daughter, Marta. Marta is fair complected with features maybe kind of like Southern Italian, Mediterranean figures, and she has a turban. And throughout the play, whenever there's questions about Black identity and heritage, she starts to fumble with the turban. And that's a kind of a theatrical device to let us know what's happening in her subconscious. In the second act, Marta is chastising her mother because she is playing a bomba record that she has just received from her granddaughter. That's the third generation of the family. The granddaughter's name is Clarita. Clarita, Clara means clear, and Clarita looks completely white. Marta married a Spaniard and had Clarita, and Marta is very proud because Clarita looks white. And she wants Clarita to marry a white man from the United States so that she can move from the island and live a life of luxury and happiness. And she vowed to herself that she would never take off the turban because she did not want to spoil the truth about the family. Marta keeps her mother, Mama Tonia, locked in the back, not locked, but in the back room, especially when people came to visit. She would not allow her mother to go outside the house because she did not want others to know the family's dark secret. Now, Clarita has a college education, and as the play goes on, we discover that her mother, Marta, suffered physical and emotional abuse from her from Clarita's father. So even though he was a wealthy man, he was an alcoholic, he was abusive. Clarita works for a company that sells insurance, an insurance company. And she is assigned to work with the gentleman from the United States. His name is Bill Hawkins. Bill Hawkins is from the state of Alabama in the southern United States. And Bill Hawkins is very proud that he speaks Spanish because he knows that by speaking Spanish, he's able to be a top seller in the Latin American market. The only thing with Bill Hawkins is he is racist. In the text, he notes there's a line that he has in which he tells Marta that he does not want to be connected in a relationship with a woman of African ancestry because I think about my parents, blue-blooded Southerners, supporters of white supremacy. It would be a shock, an unpleasant occurrence that would earn me their eternal hate. It could even kill them. In translating the play, I really started to understand that his parents are part of the Ku Klux Klan. Therefore, in his psyche, racism against people of African ancestry is normal. For Clarita, she can't understand why he would be so fixated on hate against people of African ancestry. And Clarita decides to distance herself from him when he goes to Luquillo Beach, which is one of the most beautiful beaches on the island. And he says, there's only one thing that spoils the beauty of this beach. And she asks him, what is that? And he says, the mixing of the races. I can't stand to see the mixing of races. And at that point, she discovers that he is not going to be a potential match. There was some kind of attraction, but at that point, she asked him not to see her again. But her mother, Marta, secretly invites Bill Hawkins to come to the house because she's noticed that their relationship has kind of stopped growing. And she really wants a marriage to happen so that Clarita will be happy. And in the third act, Bill Hawkins arrives and Marta is the perfect hostess. And she even has a toast with him dedicated to the Old South. And as they're talking, he does ask her about the family's heritage. And he says, do you have pictures of your mother? And she says, no, my mother never wanted to have pictures taken of her. But she looks like me, more or less like me. And she assures him that all of the family is purely white. Now, Clarita comes down and Bill is expressing his love for her, and she tells him, we can't be together. And he wants to know why. And she tells him, because I'm Black. My mom is Black. My grandmother is Black. And he gets angry, he gets enraged. And Marta is in the kitchen fixing hors d'oeuvres, and he orders her to come out. He says, come out right now. And he orders her to take off the turban. And she's about to cry. And Mama Tonya comes from the back room into the living room, speaking in Spanish, and she says, ¿Qué pasa acá? ¿Qué quieres acá? Huele a sufre. What do you want? What are you doing here? It smells like sulfur. And he asked, who is this woman? Mama Tonya starts to do the sign of the cross to him, speaking and praying for him in Spanish. And he calls them all an offensive name and flees from the house. So, in a nutshell, that's the plot of the play Vejigantes. Now, I'm going to talk about the translation process of it, which was incredible. It took me 8 years to translate this play. And I had to go through many different stages. One is just translating it literally. Then I had a stage reading with some friends of mine, which would help me to really polish it. But I wanted to keep some of the Latin spirit of it, but at the same time, make it accessible to English speakers. One of the words that appears in the play, and I'll say Vejigantes to talk about the Spanish version. The translation will be the masked mulata. In Vejigantes, the word flamboyant appears numerous times. It's a beautiful plant, a tree with bright flowers. It goes by many different names and it's found in many different parts of the world. One name is the flamboyant tree. Flamboyant tree does not have a beautiful ring to it. So in the play, I kept it as flamboyant. I have to also acknowledge one of my colleagues, Claire Sullivan, Dr. Claire Sullivan at the University of Louisville. I've been working with her on different projects, and it's been helping me to learn the science of translation. That in order to translate it, it's not just going from Spanish to English, but doing it in a way that is consistent in order to convey a consistent message. One of the other words that I did not try to translate is negrola. When someone dances bomba, the people gather around, will clap their hands, and they will go, baila negrola, baila negrolo. And I had a really heated discussion with Francisco Arrivi's son, because I never met Francisco Arrivi, only his son. And his son wanted negrolo to be translated as the N word, which is a very offensive word used to degrade individuals of African ancestry. And I explained to him that in that setting, it's an affectionate word. It's not a hostile word. And he felt like it really needed to be the N word. So we decided we would just keep it negrolo, negrola, and the reader can interpret that in whatever way sees fit to them. I did not translate abuela, which is grandmother, hijita, my little daughter, mama, hija. Those words really help add to some of the Latinness of the word, of the work. Now, one word that I did have to change, there's a line where Mama Tonya is talking about her beautiful, pure granddaughter. And she says, además de bonita, tienes un corazón de níspero. Beyond being beautiful, you have a heart as sweet as a níspero. A níspero is a loquat. Loquat is a fruit that is not well known in most of the United States. So what I did is replace that with a mango, which is a tropical fruit that most people would understand what the texture would be when it is ripe. There's another line that was very interesting to translate when Mama Tonia is talking to Clarita. She says, el matrimonio con tantas carretas puede amargar más que el pasote. Marriage with so many masks will be more bitter than I use castor oil. The original word was el pasote, which is a plant that the Mexican tea plant that is used to purge your system. Castor oil made it accessible to people who speak English. There's one line where Mama Tonia is talking to Clarita, and she says, if someone doesn't recognize the beauty in you, ellos pueden arrojarse a los tiburones. Literally, that translates as throw themselves to the sharks. Well, I translated that as whoever cannot see the beauty of heaven in you can go jump in the lake. Now, there is another expression, which is a very Spanish expression, when the locas are talking about, and this is in Act 1, Benedicto's attraction to Tonia. They say, él bebería sales, ella bebería sales por él. She would drink salt for him, which doesn't make sense when we translate it into English. Therefore, I translated it as she would do anything for him. Now, one of the nicknames that Mama Tonia gave to Bill was Tomate Pinton. Tomate Pinton, red tomato, pink tomato. I translated that into English as Mr. Paleface. It adds a bit of humor and also kind of conveys the message in the original Spanish. And what's very interesting is throughout the play, we've discovered that Mama Tonia is a devout Christian woman, but at the same time, she has folk practices that are part of the Afro-Cuban community. So many times she makes references to people's behavior being non-Christian. And with that, I kept it. I did not translate it. I just said, there's one line where she says, when she's talking to Clarita, who works with the insurance company, she says, me disgustan esos cargos. Tan pronto te canses, aléjate de la compañía de seguros. La gente que hace números con las desgracias de los demás no debe ser muy católica. Católica, right? What I translate that line as, I don't like those jobs. As soon as you get tired of that job, get away from that insurance company. Folks that benefit from the misfortune of others are not very Christian. She sees the occupation and that business as sinful because the company makes money off the misfortune of others. Now, one important part of the play, and this explains why I did not want to use the N word early on in the play, because in Act 1, they're saying baila negrola. In the third version, Francisco Arrivi made 3 versions. Well, he wrote the play, then he modified it, then he did a third modification in the late 1970s. And in that play, in that version, when Benedicto, when Bill Hawkins leaves the house, he calls them all niggers. I kept that. I translated that. And I felt like if we had used that word early on, it would take away from the sting in the third act when Bill Hawkins departs. Um, what I hope that you will get from this is that this play is now translated into English and it's accessible to an English speaking audience. It's very important that people understand the complexity of race and identity, and especially hair in the Caribbean. Because in the Caribbean, oftentimes one's hair dictates one's race. That's why in a lot of communities where people are of African ancestry, they have a good Dominican hairstylist that can straighten their hair. Because if your skin is light complected, you could pass as white like Marta, but your hair indicates the truth. And there's an expression in Spanish, uh, la piel no, la piel es accidente, pero el pelo no miente. The skin is not an accident, but the hair doesn't lie. And it's important to acknowledge that many scholars had begun to do research on hair texture and how it impacts psychologically women of color. There's novels, for example, Carmen Montañez wrote this incredible book called Pelo Bueno, Pelo Malo, and it reflects the internal struggle of a Puerto Rican woman dealing with her natural hair. And a colleague, Yolanda Arroyo Pizarro, published a children's book called Pelo Bueno as a way to respond, I guess, support Pelo Bueno, Pelo Malo. And it's a really wonderful book that teaches young girls that their hair is beautiful and it should be embraced and accepted for the way it is. Now, one of the things that's important to know is that finding a publisher for this was very difficult because there's not many publishers that publish drama. There's not many publishers that publish translations. But fortunately, I was able to find a wonderful publisher, which was Liverpool University Press. And they had a special collection, the Aris and Phillips Hispanic Classics Division. And they specialized in translations of works from Spanish into English. So I want to thank you for letting me talk about my research project, Vejigantes, the Masked Mulata, explaining its importance socially, culturally, and historically, and to share a little bit about translating parts of it to make sure that it was accessible to English speakers in the English speaking world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Thomas Edison. And of course, congratulations, enhorabuena, felicitations, parabéns.
Gracias.
Now, our colleague or the assistants can take the floor and ask the question. La parole est au public maintenant. Vous pouvez mettre vos questions là dans le post. Ustedes pueden colocar sus comentarios, preguntas ahí o manifestar su presencia Vocês podem colocar lá suas perguntas, observações, etc. Entonces, Dr. Edison, if you see any question in English, you can answer it, okay, in Spanish too.
Okay.
Meanwhile, I have a comment and question.
Yes.
I find very interesting the debate around, the debating while you're translating the play about Negrolo and Negrola.
Yes.
And I find interesting also your approach to the author, Francisco Arrivi's sons. But I was thinking, it's just a thought. You can piggyback on that. Would you think in maybe in your second edition of translation, try to research about historically what Negrolo and Negrola means in Puerto Rico, instead of refer to the son only? Of course, the son is from Puerto Rico also, of course, but his point is just the point of a son, and I'm not sure if the point of a son is the point of a father, right? So maybe the context of Puerto Rico could be interesting to give to take the lead, right? To give the sense. You can understand your point also when you say you let the readers decide. But what's happening if the reader does not have any clue about Puerto Rico? It's not really helping them. So I think as a translator, maybe you could take that a lead and say, I think this is the meaning due to the historical and ideological and linguistic context in Puerto Rico, for instance. What do you think about that?
Well, it's really interesting because one of the things that I started to notice about that term, negrolo, negrola, is it's a word that is used within a specific cultural group. And here in the United States, too, there are words that are used within the African American community, and it's accepted. It's not viewed as offensive, but if it's taken out of that context, it changes the meaning dramatically. So when Francisco Arrivi Cross, that's the name of the son, when he was saying, no, it needs to be the N word, I think that what he was thinking about, I think that he knew that his father had used the N word in the third edition of the book, but I don't think that he knew exactly where it appeared. And he had some strong feelings about it, but he's not, and I guess I should have said this, Francisco Arrivi was of part Spanish. Visually, he presents as a white person. Francisco Arrivi Cross looks white. So for him to stress what that term should be made me feel very uncomfortable. I felt like I could better determine what would be the way to translate negrolo, negrola, in order not to offend the readers. And like I mentioned earlier, to allow the word, when it does appear at the end of Act 3, to have that bite that it needs to have to offend and to show rage. So that's the way I look at it. I think that it makes me want to do some research on terms, because there's a lot of terms in Latin America to talk about race, skin color. Some are offensive, some are not. Some are like a far stretch, because from the colonial period until now, there were all these different markers to distinguish one person's class. based off of their race. So, for example, negro for a long time meant that you were enslaved. And then later on, there's mulatto or pardo or moreno, these other terms that kind of raise the status of the person. So I've done some research on these different terms. And it's also very challenging because in each country, those terms differ. So negro, for example, in Uruguay, negro is a term that is not used at a global level because it's disrespectful. So they would say a person of African ancestry. But within the Black community in Uruguay, they use Black, negro. So I think that you've tapped into an element that could have some more, could do with some more research. Saludos desde Gabon, saludos desde Kentucky.
Thank you, Dr. Edison. So, if Teresa from Gabon can say something, Teresa, puedes hacer la pregunta en español. Dr. Edison habla español. Y también el colega de Kentucky, si quiere hacer preguntas en español, también Dr. Edison puede responder en español, por favor.
Sí, está bien.
Sí. Recuerden que Muntú es interdisciplinario y multilingüe. Entonces, si hay preguntas, lo colocan ahí, y ya. Dr. Edison, while are we waiting for the comment and question, is it this debate about Negrola, of course, is complex, right?
Yes.
In Latin America, but I was thinking it would be a good work for all of us, right? For instance, how you will have translate Negro Bembon of Nicolas Guillen? You will leave it like that, or you will say, because Negro Bembon is simply N-word. So
Negro Bembon. That's so. It has been translated, and I think it was big lip black man. I don't think they used the N-word, but again, it could, in a different certain context, it could be. It's very, very complicated.
yes,
and I know also thinking about the intention of Nicolas Guillen, which is to unite and all different ethnic groups. I think that he probably wouldn't want it translated as the N-word. I think he would probably want it big lip brother or big lip black man.
But at the same time, you remember the strategy African descent in the US use also, right? When they use the N-word among the community is to unify, but at the same time, they're using it to show pride, right? Vis-a-vis the colonizer, the white colonizer. So I think Negro Bembon is on that dynamic too, right? Because when you say Negro Bembon, the person to whom he's talking is exactly from his community. So he's taking it as a sign of pride to say, you call us with the N-word, but we're proud of the N-word. And in the case of African descent US, it's not only in the late or early 20th century, even today, among communities there is certain word like African descent in US. I'm saying that because I don't like the word American. That for me is very imperialistic.
Yes, it is.
So the African descent in the US will use it still today, like among the community, but not and to show pride vis-a-vis the white component of the society. I think you put there a work for all of us, right? To see how we can collaboratively work to do some translation, and especially doing translation is for us. It should not be just today, I'm talking about scholars in African diaspora studies, right? It should not just be an activity in the classroom. Is a key. Is a key in the struggle, right? In the society in which these people are living, this African descent are living, because sometimes African descent in Brazil are saying about the same struggle in US, or they're talking about the same struggle in other countries of Latin America, or they're talking about the same struggle about African descent in Europe, but yet they cannot understand each other because of a language barrier. So we need to take the next step now, not to have the translation as just an academic activity, but a real tool for liberation too, for kind of liberation. That's what is dear to me in Muntú, like we multilingual, because the connection can be done by the language, right?
And I
So
would suspect that I know that in Spanish, you can tell me if it exists in French, there is this phenomenon in which there is a language, a way that people of African ancestry, there's words that they can use within their tight community, but it can't be used as a whole. And one of the things that happens with rap music, there's a lot of words that are used in rap music. I do karaoke, and I noticed that when there's a rap song sung, there's some people who are not part of the African American community, they will see the N word and they will sing it. And when they do that, it destroys the energy in the space, because that is a word which is sacred to people in that group. But to say it and you're not part of that group, and it's because there's a lack of sensitivity to understand that this word is so charged that you do not have the right to use it. Is there something like that happens in French?
yes, in because what's happened, the advantage of the African descent in France, that is like, people. I'm talking about the contemporary, right? Because you remember Europe was the Middle Passage.
Yes.
It was just a part of passage. But one thing, like the migration, all they come from far, right? But let's say contemporary time, like including the 20th century. Um, People come from Africa, and they come from no less than 2,000 languages, right? So through their own language, they can have a distortion of the French language. This is the first advantage. So they can even use, sometimes not even using the language from French. It can be from the African language, right? And of course, there are several languages that have been developed like that. For instance, one of the languages circulating a lot in the French dictionary today come from, a lot of them, not only from Cote d'Ivoire, where I come from. It's just a coincidence I come from Cote d'Ivoire. It's not because it's a lot of this word are getting the French dictionary. But since we're talking here about Blackness, I want to talk about that. How is it very interesting, the case of Black in France. What Black did in France, they made the word Black be accepted by the white French counterpart as a sign of pride. They did not change it from English to French. Why? Because they were taking the idea of the Harlem Renaissance and the concept of Black is beautiful. They took it and they claim it as part of the pride, Black pride. So today in France, instead of saying the derogative word, that it was derogative at that time, the N word, and noir was derogative. It was like a little bit like neg, nigger, neg. So now even the white counterpart publicly, maybe privately, they're still saying neg, right? They're still saying the N word, but publicly they say Black to the African descent. So that means they're recognizing to them the pride through the word the claim coming from US, you know. So
Mhm.
so this is a very phenomenon that is very unique there, right, in France. And this is kind of what we need to kind of work. We need to do more the cross the crosswalk we need to do about this kind of translation, talking about translation.
And one of the things that I really appreciate about the Muntú seminars is it allows us to talk across cultural groups. And we
Exactly.
start to see that there's parallels, for example, language, talking about race,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the whole concept of hair, how within these communities, there's all this energy built around these topics. And we think, for example, in the United States, that black hair is a struggle in the United States or a topic in the United States. It's not. It is a global topic. It's a global struggle that women have to struggle with being accepted if they choose to wear their hair in a natural way. And that, connects a lot with the play that Martha had to learn. Oh, and at the end, I forgot to say that she does take off the turban is a ritual, a spiritual ritual that happens at the end of the third act, where she is able to embrace her hair despite what she has been educated to think.
Yes, and now like you're talking about hair. Um, right now, like we're talking here in Muntú, in Latin America, they're having and I love that. This is what Muntú is promoting to. In Colombia specifically, all this week they're talking about the hair, the claiming black hair as sign of pride, you know. So is one in one activity like we will do soon in Muntú is to make sure the community come to participate in Muntú too. You know, like they come to talk because
Mhm.
they produce knowledge too.
Yes.
Because they are producer of knowledge too. And by the way, the lady who's coordinating that, maybe you know her, Edna Liliana, who was the TV host in Colombia, black TV host in Colombia. She's leading the seminar, right, about the black hair as a sign of pride and identity. So I think this is, like you say, is a global phenomenon. The global blackness. That's why my big dream was that, like, we can concentrate all that in a group, and I'm so happy, like I found about the name that confederate on all this global blackness, because it's circulating in Africa and other places of the world. Teresa, ¿tienes pregunta? Tomás, ¿cómo se llama el señor de Kentucky?
El señor de Kentucky, ¿quién?
Hay un señor aquí que creo que está poniendo una pregunta. ¿Puedes leer,
Mi
Tomás?
inglés no es tan bueno, es que poco difícil captar todo lo que he dicho. Desde Gabón. Hola, desde Gabón. Yo no sé si Dani hablas español. ¿Podemos hablar en español o francés?
Sí, habla español. Sí, habla español. Sí, si tiene una pregunta, pone la pregunta. Si puedes poner la pregunta ahí, en español.
And while they're doing that, I do want to take an opportunity to say hello to my brothers and sisters in Montevideo, Uruguay. They are doing some incredible research, and we published a collection of poetry which reflects candombe music, which is just like bomba is from Puerto Rico, candombe is from Uruguay. And it was wonderful meeting with them and sharing some of the same struggles that they have. And also as writers, it's very difficult. You and I both work at universities, so we're able to publish, we're able to write, we have time and space to do it. But in Uruguay, a lot of them struggle financially to publish the things that they write. Um, and they have some incredible things to express. And I think that we have a responsibility to help find vehicles for them to publish what they're writing.
Mm-hmm. And this is wonderful, though, this kind of collaboration. And also, I think Uruguay is having great movement, great Black movement there. And I was happy 2 years ago when I invited the embassy of Uruguay to sponsor, right, a symposium of Black in Uruguay. I was so happy they respond favorably. And this was very, very great. All the leaders, right, of a Black community in Uruguay was there. It was fantastic. We need to continue working with those of this country that claim in the 20th century that they were not necessarily multicultural or multiracial, that they were claiming they were only European descent. I'm glad to see like they're finally acknowledging the presence of African descent there, and they're even working closely with them, right, and letting emerging a great group of African descent. The same thing is happening in Chile also, right? And then it's happening in Argentina and Costa Rica, start a little bit earlier, right? Because of the great people in Costa Rica, etc.
One of the things that was very interesting when I was in Uruguay is I met several individuals that appeared white, but they're very, very proud of their Black heritage. And it's a phenomenon because here in the United States, we really don't have that to occur much. But it was interesting because they wrote poems, they wrote literature from a Black perspective, but it was difficult because I kept saying to myself, how could this person be Black? But it's helped me to understand that the skin color does not always reflect what's inside the individual. And I think that here in the United States, we don't have that type of perspective, and we need to have more individuals that appear white to embrace the Blackness that they have inside.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. We want to say hi, and Thomas, you can say hi to Vianney also. He's from Gabon. He's like you were saying, mi inglés no es tan bueno. But it's good for him to be there, right? Like, está bien, bienvenido. Está bien. Eso es el espíritu Muntú.
Exacto, sí.
Las
Globalmente.
Y la africanía global. A propósito de esto, no es fácil, ¿verdad? Pero estoy tratando de ver una cosa. Primero, yo quiero que la gente en Muntú haga un esfuerzo. ¿Cuál es el esfuerzo? Le explico ahora. Lo que pasa es que a veces la gente ha aprendido inglés o a veces ha aprendido español, pero pensaron que era algo como para sacar notas, ¿verdad? Y ahora se dan cuenta de que es vital. Entonces, yo les pido que vuelvan a sus cuadernos o que vayan a aplicaciones para mejorar esos idiomas, aparte de los idiomas africanos que van a ser también parte de Muntú. La segunda cosa, también porque hay que facilitar las cosas, ¿no? No es fácil porque no hay mucha gente, pero estamos cerca de tener un equipo de intérpretes y traductores dentro de las universidades afiliadas a Muntú. Y pronto van a aparecer, las caras de esos intérpretes y traductores van a aparecer y eso también es buena noticia. Pero recuerden que la idea es que nosotros mismos tenemos que hacer un esfuerzo, ¿no? Con las aplicaciones para reforzar un poco nuestras capacidades lingüísticas. Another question to you, Dr. Edison. So,
Yes.
why did you publish with Liverpool, the Liverpool Press?
It took me 4 years trying to find a press in the United States, and I was rejected. And fortunately, one of my colleagues from work told me that he had just signed a book contract with Liverpool University Press. So I contacted them, and they just happened. Now, they told me that they could not publish the translation without having the original. So it's a dual language book, because one of the things that they want is for translators to be able to see the original and how it was translated. So I had to go back to Roberto Ramos Pereira, who has the rights for the work, and finally he gave me permission to publish the 3rd edition as the base, and then that's what I translated.
And also on that note, I would like to say that Cambridge publishing scholars is good too. They most of the time they don't have a problem, right, to publish. They always tell me one of the proceeding of a conference at Harvard was published by them, and with no problem. And when the last one are published in Colombia, because we have our people there, they wanted to publish, but they don't have a problem either with languages, And Colombia, La Universidad del Valle, they did not see any problem either. So
in Mexico?
No, La Universidad del Valle in Colombia.
Oh, okay.
They did not have any problem either with the different languages I published last time.
And you know what? I don't know if it exists, but it would be wonderful if there was a listing, and maybe that's something that we could do collectively, of publishing houses for those of us that are trying to find spaces, like definitely Liverpool University Press. You mentioned Cambridge. We can build onto that, because there's a lot of us that are writing, and a lot of our colleagues in Colombia and Uruguay and Mexico that need to find some place that will publish their ideas and their projects.
Great idea. You can personally, right, talk to them, and we can do also institutionally through Muntú, put a list and share that with them. We need to do that. Because for me, a writing for what I call the colonized subject, from Africa, from Latin America, from Asia, from even the imperialist US, writing is a kind of occupying the space that is denied publicly. So it's not just an activity of fun, like, okay, I'm writing because today I don't have anything to do. No, writing is something that is to express something that is denied in the public space. We can even do a simple activity now. You will see, take all the people from Du Bois through Harlem Renaissance, from Harlem Renaissance to Fanon, from Fanon to Césaire, from Césaire to all this generation today. There is no one who is talking about what's happening among Star Wars. No, they're talking about how people are discriminated, how people are suffering from ethnicity, how people are suffering from migration, etc., etc. So people are not just writing for fun, like, hey, yes, this is a fun stuff to do, and this literature is based on a general. No. That's why it's not unusual. That's why it's common to see. For instance, most of African writers, that they have multiple talent. because they want to say stuff. They want to say it on the way they want. They don't want to be put on a cage. Like, oh, this one is a novelist. This one is a poet. This one is no. They're not like that. You take one and he's saying everything. Like Langston Hughes was everything. Césaire was everything. Senghor was everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't fit on this Eurocentric definition that, oh, this is a literature, is a fiction. No, for them it's not a fiction. Who can dare to say what Manuel Zapata Oliveira wrote as a definition?
Oh my God, that right there. That is a whole episode in itself. I'm teaching a graduate level course, an undergrad course, and right now we're talking about Manuel Zapata Oliveira. And his stuff is so amazing that he was Colombian, but he was a global artist, medical doctor, theorist, anthropologist, and most of us don't know about him because not all this stuff is translated to English.
Exactly. So it is we need to decolonize the way we disseminate knowledge, right? And I think there is someone else who want to say hi or a comment here. Let's see. No, it was Diane next. Yes.
Well, and people are welcome if they have questions.
This is Teresa. Okay. Teresa want to ask a question on the chat, maybe? Is that Teresa or who?
Teresa Manuel Ayang.
Yes. So it's maybe she just saying hi or what? Oh, she said gracias. Okay.
If people do have questions, they are welcome to send me an email at thomas.edison@Louisville, LOUISVILLE.edu. And I will be glad to respond if they want to send me emails when they see this video.
Muy bien. En otras palabras, primero hay que suscribir aquí en el canal YouTube de Muntú. Luego, si tienen preguntas para el profesor Tomás Edison, si no han entendido el deletreo de su correo electrónico, que me envíen un mensaje y yo les comparto el correo electrónico del profesor Edison. No hay problema. Y mi última pregunta, Dr. Edison, when the book since when the book is available?
Ya está de venta. Se puede ir a Amazon.com, Amazon.com. You'll be able to access it. You'll actually be able to access all 3 of my books.
Muy bien.
And it's
Amazon.
Enjoy it. There's some incredible stuff there.
Muy bien. Entonces, with any further ado, thank you very much for coming, Muntú. By the way, thank you very much for always coming to because you always deliver great stuff for Muntú.
And thank you for what you are doing for those of us that are producing literature.
Entonces, gracias a los que llegaron y fue un gusto verlos y verles. Por favor, que compartan esto. Primero que suscriban al canal.
Sí, claro.
Y que compartan esto con otros amigos, amigas, amigues. Y Shango vuelve en el mes próximo. Chao, chao.
Chao, chao.